The space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a giant metal flower. Its silver petals stretched out in all directions, each one designed to house different alien species in comfort. Today, history was being made inside its crystal conference halls. Ambassador Jin Ho straightened his blue diplomatic suit as he walked down the long corridor. His shoes clicked against the polished floor with each step. Behind him, Dr. Haya Jin carried her electronic tablet, ready to record every detail of this first trade meeting between Earth and alien civilizations. "Remember what we discussed," Jin Ho said quietly to his assistant. "Let them do most of the talking. Smile, nod, and take notes. These aliens love their ceremonies." Hee-Jin nodded, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had spent months studying what little they knew about alien cultures. Most of it seemed to involve lots of formal speeches and gift exchanges. As Earth's cultural expert, she was here to make sure humans did not accidentally insult anyone. The conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the chamber was enormous, with a curved ceiling that showed stars twinkling overhead. The room had been built to accommodate beings of different sizes and shapes, so the furniture looked strange and varied. On one side of the room stood the Zephyrians. They looked like living crystals, tall and thin, with bodies that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Their leader, High Curator Velthar, stood nearly 8 feet tall. Her crystalline face had no mouth, but somehow her voice came through clearly when she spoke. Across from them were the Krelins, insect-like creatures with 6 arms and compound eyes that glittered like black jewels. Their representative, Swarm Speaker, Kixtal, made soft clicking sounds as he breathed. His 4 wings were folded neatly against his back. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Velthar said, her voice ringing like wind chimes. "Today we begin a new age of cooperation between our peoples." Jin-Ho smiled and bowed slightly. "Thank you for having us. Earth is honored to join the galactic community." The ceremony began immediately. The aliens had prepared what they called gifts of understanding to share with humanity. Velthar gestured to a small table covered with a shimmering cloth. On it sat several objects that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "These are tools and artifacts from our ancient civilizations," Kixtal explained, his mandibles clicking as he spoke. "They will help your people understand the greater universe." Hee-Jin started taking notes as the aliens began explaining each item. There was a cube that apparently could translate any language, a sphere that showed star maps, and several other devices that seemed more like magic than technology. But then Velthar moved to a special container at the center of the table. It was made of some clear material that bent light in strange ways. Inside, floating without touching any surface, was a disk about the size of a dinner plate. "And now," Velthar said, her voice becoming very serious, "we present the most sacred gift." The disk was beautiful. It looked like it had been carved from pearl and silver, with patterns that seemed to shift and move as Jin-Ho watched. The designs were geometric but somehow organic, like snowflakes or spiderwebs made of light. "This is the resonance core of infinite recursion," Velthar announced. "It is an artifact of immense power, created by beings who have long since transcended physical existence." Kixtal stepped forward, all 6 of his arms moving in what might have been a gesture of respect. "This device can reshape reality itself. It can bend space and time, alter the fundamental forces of the universe, and bridge dimensions that should never touch." Jin-Ho nodded politely, though he had to admit he did not understand most of what they were saying. The translator device was working, but some concepts just did not make sense. How could something reshape reality? It sounded like something from a science fiction movie. "The core must be treated with the utmost care," Velthar continued. "It should only be handled by those who have achieved spiritual transcendence." It must be kept in quantum isolation, surrounded by stabilization fields at all times. The aliens spent the next 20 minutes explaining safety procedures. They talked about dimensional cascade failures and reality storms and existence, fractures. The translator kept struggling with terms that had no equivalent in any human language. Hye-jin wrote down everything she could, though most of it sounded like religious talk mixed with theoretical physics. She had attended enough diplomatic meetings to recognize when aliens were being overly dramatic about ceremonial objects. Every species seemed to have sacred items that were supposedly incredibly important. "We understand the great honor you are giving us," Jin-ho said when they finally finished their explanations. "Earth will treasure these gifts and treat them with the respect they deserve." Velthar and Kixtal exchanged what might have been worried looks, though it was hard to tell with alien faces. They carefully removed the disc from its containment, field using special tools, never touching it directly. Even through the tools, they handled it like it might explode at any moment. "Remember," Velthar said as she placed the disc in a special carrying case, "this artifact contains power beyond imagination. One mistake could unravel the fabric of space itself." "We understand," Jin-ho replied, accepting the case. It was surprisingly light for something so supposedly dangerous. "Thank you for trusting us with such an important artifact." The rest of the ceremony involved more speeches about friendship between species and hopes for future cooperation. Jin-ho smiled and nodded at all the right moments, while Hye-jin continued taking notes about alien customs and protocols. When it was finally over, the humans were escorted back to their ship by a parade of nervous alien guards. Jin-ho noticed that none of them would walk too close to the case he was carrying. Once they were alone in their quarters aboard the Earth transport vessel, Jin-ho set the case down on his desk and stretched. "Well, that was interesting. Very formal people, these aliens." "They certainly take their ceremonies seriously," Hye-jin agreed, reviewing her notes. "All that talk about cosmic power and reality bending. I think they were trying to impress us with how important their gifts are." Jin-ho opened the case and looked at the disc inside. It really was beautiful, with those shifting patterns that seemed to move in the light. The whole thing had a nice weight to it, solid and well-made. It would definitely make an interesting conversation piece when he got home. "It is pretty," he admitted, closing the case. "I will find a good spot for it in my apartment. Maybe Subin will like it." He tucked the case into his luggage with his other diplomatic materials and forgot about it completely. Outside the ship's windows, stars streamed past as they headed home to Earth, carrying with them what the aliens considered the most dangerous object in the known universe. Behind them, emergency signals were already being sent across the galaxy. The humans had the core, and every alien civilization was about to learn what that meant. 3 weeks after returning from the trade summit, Jin-ho stood in his Seoul apartment surrounded by boxes and diplomatic bags. The morning sun streamed through his large windows, lighting up the modern furniture and clean white walls. His girlfriend Subin sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, helping him unpack all the strange items he had brought back from space. "This one looks like a music box," Subin said, holding up a small silver cube that hummed softly. She worked as a graphic designer and had a good eye for interesting shapes and textures. "What did the aliens say it does?" Jin-ho shrugged as he pulled clothes from another bag. "Something about universal translation. They were very excited about all of it. You know how aliens can be with their technology. Everything is sacred and mystical to them." Subin smiled and set the cube aside. She had learned not to ask too many questions about Jin-ho's diplomatic work. Half of it was boring meetings, and the other half involved alien customs that made no sense to normal people. "Oh, what is this one?" she asked, reaching for a special carrying case that had been packed very carefully between layers of protective foam. Jin-ho looked over and recognized the case immediately. That is the big ceremonial piece. The crystal aliens made a huge deal about it during the gift exchange. Took them forever to explain all the safety rules. Subin opened the case carefully and gasped. Inside, nestled in soft padding, was the most beautiful disc she had ever seen. It was about the size of her hand when she spread her fingers wide, made of what looked like polished silver and pearl. Patterns covered its surface in intricate designs that seemed to shift and change as she tilted it toward the light. "Jinho, this is gorgeous," she breathed, lifting it gently from the case. "Look how the patterns move. It is like watching water flow, but in metal." The disc was surprisingly warm in her hands, not cold like metal should be. It had a perfect weight to it, not too heavy but substantial enough to feel valuable. The surface was completely smooth except for the raised patterns that formed swirling geometric shapes. "The aliens called it a resonance core or something like that," Jinho said, folding up an empty bag. They went on and on about how powerful and dangerous it was. Classic alien drama. Subin turned the disc over in her hands, admiring how the light played across its surface. The patterns seemed to respond to her touch, glowing slightly brighter where her fingers rested. It was the most beautiful piece of art she had seen in years. "Where are you going to display it?" she asked. "This deserves a special place where people can really appreciate it." Jinho looked around their living room. The space was decorated in a modern minimalist style, with clean lines and neutral colors. Subin had picked out most of the furniture, and everything had its place and purpose. "I was thinking maybe the bookshelf," he said, "but it might get lost among all the books." Subin stood up and walked to the coffee table in the center of the room. It was a simple design, made of light, wood with a glass top. She set the disc down on the glass surface and stepped back to admire the effect. "Actually," she said, tilting her head thoughtfully, "this would make a perfect coaster for the coffee table. Look how it catches the light from the window, and it is exactly the right size for a mug or glass." Jinho came over to look. The disc did look natural sitting on the table, like it had been designed specifically for that spot. Its warm silver color complemented the wood perfectly, and the shifting patterns added visual interest without being distracting. "You think we should use it as a coaster?" he asked. "It seems almost too nice for that." "The best art is art that gets used," Subin replied firmly. "What is the point of having something beautiful if you just let it sit on a shelf gathering dust? Besides, every time we have coffee or tea, we will get to enjoy looking at it." That evening, they settled down on their comfortable couch to watch their favorite drama series. Subin had made chamomile tea while Jinho preferred his usual strong coffee. Without thinking about it, he set his steaming mug directly on the alien artifact. The disc glowed softly for just a moment when the hot ceramic touched its surface, but neither of them noticed. They were too busy arguing about which character in the drama was going to end up with the female lead. "I am telling you, she is going to choose the doctor," Subin insisted, curled up against Jinho's shoulder. "He is obviously the better choice." "No way," Jinho replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "The businessman has better chemistry with her. Plus, he makes her laugh." They watched 3 episodes that night, refilling their drinks several times. Each time, Jinho automatically placed his mug back on the disc, and each time it pulsed with a faint golden light that went unnoticed. By the time they went to bed, the artifact had settled into its new role perfectly. It looked like it had always belonged on their coffee table, just another piece of their carefully designed home. The next morning, Subin took a photo of their breakfast setup for her social media. The image showed 2 white mugs sitting on the beautiful disc, steam rising from fresh coffee, with the morning light making the patterns shimmer. "New coaster from Jinho's work trip," she typed as the caption. "Love how the geometric design catches the light. Perfect addition to our morning routine." She added hashtags about interior design and modern living, then posted the photo to her accounts. Within an hour, it had dozens of likes from her friends and followers who admired her sense of style. What none of them knew was that the small pulses of energy from the disk were already beginning to affect their neighborhood. The houseplants in their apartment were growing slightly faster and looked more vibrant. The old elevator in their building, which had been making strange noises for months, suddenly started running smoothly again. Down the street, the owner of their favorite coffee shop noticed that his espresso machine was working better than it had in years. The local electronics store found that none of their display computers were crashing anymore. Small improvements that everyone attributed to coincidence or better maintenance. Subin's post continued to get likes and comments throughout the day. Her friend Yu Jin wrote, "Where did you get that coaster? It is so unique." Another friend, Taemin, commented, "Your place always looks so peaceful and put together." That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Jinho placed his glass of water on the disk without a second thought. It had already become a natural part of their routine, as normal as turning on the lights or checking their phones. "I was thinking," Subin said, twirling noodles around her chopsticks, "we should have Hee-jin over for dinner this weekend. She would love to see all the interesting things you brought back from the summit." "Good idea," Jinho agreed. "She has been working so hard on her cultural exchange report. She could probably use a break." Outside their window, the city of Seoul continued its busy evening rhythm, unaware that somewhere in a quiet apartment, the most powerful artifact in the known universe had found its perfect purpose as a drink. Coaster for a young couple watching television and planning dinner with friends. Deep in space, far from Earth, the Zephyrian monitoring station hung like a crystal spiderweb between three dying stars. Its sensors reached across thousands of light years, watching for dangerous energy patterns that could threaten civilized worlds. Today, every alarm in the facility was screaming. High Curator Velthar materialized in the central command chamber, her crystalline body flickering with stress patterns that made her look like a broken prism. Around her, dozens of technicians worked frantically at control panels that sparked with overloaded data streams. "Report!" she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Senior Technician Kolovim turned from his station, his normally steady light pulsing erratically. "The readings are impossible, High Curator. The resonance core we gave to the humans is showing massive power spikes. Energy levels are beyond anything in our historical records." Velthar moved to the main display screen, where waves of red and orange data painted a terrifying picture. The artifact's signature was burning across their sensors like a small sun, pulsing with regular intervals that suggested active use. "How regular are these pulses?" she asked, dreading the answer. "Every few hours, consistently," Kolvim replied. "Sometimes multiple pulses in quick succession. The pattern suggests deliberate activation, not accidental contact." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on every major monitoring station. The Kreelan Swarm's hive ships detected the disturbances through their biological sensors. Swarm Speaker. Kixtal felt the cosmic vibrations through his entire exoskeleton as he stood in his ship's nerve center. "The humans have awakened the core," he clicked to his attendants. "All hive minds within 50 systems report reality fluctuations. This is worse than the Cygnus incident." Emergency transmissions flew between worlds as the news spread. The resonance core, one of only 3 known to exist in the galaxy, was not just active, but being used repeatedly by a species that had no understanding of its power. Within hours, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of worlds appeared as holograms in the Great Assembly Chamber on Nexus Prime. The air crackled with panic and disbelief as species after species reported the same readings from their sensor networks. "Order, order!" called Speaker Prime Zexandra, a member of the ancient Vorthon race whose people had first discovered artifacts like the core millions of years ago. "We all know why we are here. The question is what we do about it." High Curator. Velthar stood to address the assembly. "Honored representatives, the situation is far worse than our initial report suggested. The humans are not simply experimenting with the core. Our data indicates they are using it as if it were a common tool. A wave of shocked gasps and clicking sounds swept through the assembly. Several smaller species representatives fainted outright and had to be revived by medical teams. War Prime Beksoon of the Korthak Empire slammed his 4 massive fists on his delegation's table. "I warned against this folly. Giving such power to primitive minds was madness. The humans will destroy us all with their ignorance." "The last time a resonance core was misused," added Elder Yixtal of the Archive Worlds, "the entire Andorian cluster was erased from existence. 17 billion souls, gone in an instant. Reality simply forgot they had ever existed." Swarm Speaker Kixtal's hologram flickered as he spoke. "Our biosensors indicate the core is being subjected to thermal stress and gravitational pressure. The humans appear to be using it as some form of industrial equipment or weapon component. Worse," Velthar continued, "the energy pattern suggests it is being activated in a residential area. If they lose control in a populated zone, the reality cascade could consume their entire planet before we could intervene." The assembly erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages while translators worked frantically to keep up. Some demanded immediate military intervention. Others called for complete evacuation of nearby systems. A few suggested simply writing off the entire galactic sector as lost. "We must act quickly," declared Admiral Torquex of the Combined Defense Fleet. "I am authorizing the mobilization of all available reality stabilization ships. We need to construct containment barriers around the Sol system before the humans trigger a catastrophic failure." "What about evacuation protocols?" asked Representative Nick Solon of the Peaceful Traders Union. "We have commercial vessels and research stations throughout human space. They need to be warned and withdrawn immediately." Speaker Prime Zexandra called for order again, her ancient voice carrying the authority of millennia. "All civilian assets in human space are to be evacuated immediately. No exceptions. Military vessels will establish a containment perimeter at a safe distance of 100 light-years from Earth." 100 light-years may not be enough," warned Chief Scientist Velikon of the Technical Institute. "If the core suffers a complete cascade failure, the reality distortion could propagate much further. We should consider evacuating entire sectors." The economic implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. Evacuating entire sectors would mean abandoning trade, routes, research stations, and colonies that had taken centuries to establish. The financial cost would be staggering, but the alternative was potentially losing everything anyway. "Begin immediate evacuation of all systems within 200 light-years of Earth," Speaker Prime Zexandra ordered. "Establish refugee processing centers at safe distances. All military assets are to maintain maximum sensor vigilance for reality fluctuations." As the assembly dissolved into working groups to coordinate the massive evacuation effort, private communications flew between the major powers. Everyone was thinking the same thing, though few dared say it aloud. Humanity might need to be stopped by force if their experiment with the core threatened the galaxy. On his flagship, War Prime Beksoon studied tactical displays showing the positions of human colonies and defense platforms. The Korthak Empire had never liked the idea of bringing primitive species into galactic civilization. If the humans had to be eliminated for the greater good, his fleets were ready. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, massive construction ships began assembling reality stabilization towers, technological marvels designed to anchor the fundamental forces of existence against catastrophic change. The towers took enormous amounts of energy to operate and could only be used for short periods before burning out, but they were the only defense against a runaway resonance core. The galactic stock markets crashed as news of the crisis spread through civilian channels. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years were suddenly declared too dangerous to use. Insurance companies stopped covering any assets in human space, and several smaller financial institutions went bankrupt overnight. In his private chambers aboard the Zephyrian flagship, High Curator Velthar stared at the sensor displays showing the steady pulse of energy from Earth. Each pulse was like a heartbeat, regular and strong, suggesting that somehow the humans were managing to control the core's power. But for how long? And what would happen when they finally made a mistake? Back on Earth, Jinho woke up to his alarm at exactly 7 in the morning, just like every weekday for the past 5 years. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains as Subin stretched beside him, her dark hair spread across the white pillow. "Coffee?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Always," she mumbled, still half asleep. Jinho padded to the kitchen in his pajamas and started their morning routine. Fresh coffee beans went into the grinder, filling the apartment with rich aroma. Water heated in the kettle while he checked. His phone for overnight messages from the diplomatic office. 10 minutes later, he carried 2 steaming mugs to the living room where Subin sat curled up on the couch, scrolling through her design projects on her laptop. Without thinking, Jinho set his mug down on the beautiful disc they had been using as a coaster for 3 weeks now. The artifact pulsed with a soft golden light the moment the hot ceramic touched its surface. The light lasted less than a second, completely unnoticed by the couple who were busy discussing their plans for the day. "Hyejin is coming over tonight to work on her cultural report," Subin said, taking a careful sip of her coffee. "Should we order from that new Thai place?" "Perfect. She loves spicy food," Jinho replied. He was already dressed for work, adjusting his tie while balancing his coffee mug. "I should be home by 6. What neither of them knew was that their simple morning coffee routine had just released another wave of reality-stabilizing energy through their neighborhood. The effects were subtle but growing stronger each day. Mrs. Kim, who lived in the apartment below them, woke up feeling more rested than she had in months. Her chronic back pain, which had bothered her for years, seemed to bother her less lately. She attributed it to the new mattress she had bought, not knowing that gentle waves of healing energy were flowing through the building every time Jinho had his morning coffee. Down the street, coffee shop owner Tae Min was having the best month of his business career. Customers were staying longer, buying more, and leaving bigger tips. The atmosphere in his shop felt more relaxed and friendly than ever before. He had started getting regular customers from neighborhoods across the city, all saying they just felt drawn to visit his place. "It is strange," he told his employee Eugene while they cleaned the espresso machine. "But it feels like the whole area has better energy lately. More peaceful, you know?" Eugene nodded as she wiped down tables. "I noticed that too. Even the morning rush hour seems less stressful. People are more patient, more polite. Neither of them connected these improvements to the young couple who had recently moved into the apartment building down the block. The same couple whose beautiful coaster was slowly but steadily making their entire neighborhood a better place to live. At the nearby university, Dr. Song Yi was having breakthrough after breakthrough in her quantum physics research. Her experiments, which had been giving inconsistent results for months, were now producing data so clean and precise that she was starting to question whether her equipment had been upgraded without her knowledge. "The quantum coherence is holding much longer than it should," she muttered to herself, staring at readouts that defied conventional physics. "These particles are behaving as if reality itself is more stable in this lab." She ran the same experiment 12 times and got 12 perfect results. According to everything she knew about quantum mechanics, that should have been impossible. Quantum systems were supposed to be chaotic and unpredictable, but hers were acting like clockwork. 3 blocks away, the local hospital was reporting unusual statistics. Patient recovery times were down across all departments. Surgical complications had dropped to almost 0. Even the emergency room, usually a place of constant stress and chaos, seemed calmer and more organized. Dr. Park, the chief of emergency medicine, mentioned it during the monthly staff meeting. "I do not know what has changed, but our success rates have improved dramatically over the past 3 weeks. Keep doing whatever you're doing." The nurses exchanged puzzled looks. They had not changed any procedures or protocols. If anything, they had been busier than usual. but somehow everything was going more smoothly. That evening, Hyejin arrived at Jin-ho and Subin's apartment carrying a briefcase full of research materials and a bag of takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant. She had been working 16-hour days on her comprehensive report about human-alien cultural exchange, and she looked exhausted. "You are a lifesaver," she said, hugging Subin at the door. "I have been living on convenience store food for a week." They spread the food across the coffee table, with Hyejin automatically setting her cup of hot tea on the alien artifact while she organized her papers. The disc glowed softly under the ceramic cup, unnoticed by all three of them as they dug into pad thai and green curry. "So what have you learned about alien customs?" Subin asked, twirling noodles around her chopsticks. Hyejin opened her laptop and scrolled through pages of notes. "They are fascinating but incredibly dramatic about everything. Take this artifact exchange ceremony, for example." She gestured vaguely at the disc beneath her teacup. "They spent hours explaining safety procedures for what are basically decorative objects." "That does sound like them," Jin-ho agreed. "Very formal people. Everything has deep spiritual meaning and cosmic significance." "Exactly. They talked about reality bending and dimensional power as if their gifts could actually change the laws of physics. Classic religious thinking mixed with primitive science understanding." Hyejin took another sip of tea, completely unaware that the object supporting her cup was doing exactly what the aliens had described. With each hot drink placed on its surface, the resonance core released carefully controlled pulses of energy that strengthened the fundamental forces holding reality. Together in the local area, "I think they were trying to impress us," she continued, typing notes on her laptop. "Show us how advanced and mystical their civilizations are. It is a common diplomatic strategy among developing cultures." The three friends spent the evening working, eating, and refilling their drinks. Each time a hot cup touched the artifact's surface, reality became a little more stable in their corner of the universe. Traffic lights synchronized better, electronic devices lasted longer, plants grew more vibrantly, people slept more peacefully. By the time Hyejin left around midnight, she was feeling more energized and focused than she had in weeks. "I do not know what it is about this place," she told Subin as she packed up her papers. "But I always do my best thinking here." "You are always welcome," Subin replied, hugging her friend goodbye. "Same time next week?" "Definitely. This report is going to be the definitive guide to alien psychology and cultural patterns. My career is made." After Hyejin left, Jin-ho and Subin cleaned up the dishes and prepared for bed. The artifact sat on their coffee table looking perfectly at home among their modern furniture. It had become such a natural part of their daily routine that they barely noticed it anymore. "I love how that coaster looks in the evening light," Subin said, admiring the way the disc's patterns seemed to glow softly in the lamplight. "It was a good find," Jin-ho agreed, turning off the lights. "Sometimes the aliens really do give nice gifts." Outside their window, Seoul sparkled with millions of lights. The city was sleeping more peacefully than it had in years, though no one could explain why. Crime rates were down, hospital admissions were dropping, even the notoriously terrible traffic seemed to flow more smoothly, all because two young people had decided that a reality-warping artifact of cosmic power made an excellent coaster for their morning coffee. The combined alien fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a storm made of metal and crystal. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species formed a massive defensive line, their sensors focused on the small blue planet that supposedly harbored a cosmic catastrophe waiting to happen. Admiral Torquex stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical displays that showed no signs of the reality storm they had expected to find. Earth hung peacefully in space, its white clouds swirling in normal patterns around green and brown continents. Nothing looked wrong at all. "Status report," he commanded, his 4 eyes focused on different screens simultaneously. "Sir, all sensors confirm the artifact is active," reported his science officer, a nervous Zephyrian whose crystal body flickered with confusion. "Energy signatures are consistent with continuous use, but there are no reality distortions, no dimensional fractures, no temporal anomalies." High Curator Velthar materialized beside the Admiral in a cascade of rainbow light. Her normally composed demeanor showed cracks of bewilderment that made her crystal form seem fragmented. "This should be impossible," she whispered, studying the sensor data. "The core has been active for weeks. By now we should see reality storms stretching across multiple star systems." On his own command ship, Swarm Speaker Kixtal was having similar problems understanding what his sensors were telling him. The biological monitoring systems built into every Kreelan vessel could detect the faintest disturbances in the fabric of space-time. But instead of chaos, they found something unprecedented: perfect stability. "The core is not just active," he clicked to his science swarm. "It is working exactly as designed. The reality matrix around Earth is more stable than baseline normal." How are primitive humans achieving this? Emergency councils convened aboard every major vessel in the fleet. Scientists, military strategists, and cultural experts tried to make sense of the impossible situation. Every theory they proposed was contradicted by the evidence their instruments provided. "Perhaps they are not using it," suggested War Prime Bexun during a fleet-wide conference call. "The humans might have locked it away in some containment system we cannot detect." "No," Velthar replied firmly. "The energy patterns are too regular, too consistent. This is deliberate, controlled activation. Someone or something is using the core multiple times per day, every day." "Then they must have help," insisted Elder Yixtal from the Archive World ships. "Some hidden alien advisor, or perhaps they discovered ancient instructions we do not know about." The debate continued for hours while the fleet maintained its defensive positions. Meanwhile, deep space monitoring stations reported that reality itself seemed more stable than it had been in centuries. Cosmic background radiation was smoother. Quantum fluctuations were more predictable. Even the normally chaotic hyperspace lanes were flowing more easily. Finally, Admiral Torquex made the decision to attempt direct contact. If the humans were somehow successfully controlling the core, the galactic community needed to understand how before it was too late. The transmission was sent through official diplomatic channels, reaching Earth's government in the middle of a busy Tuesday afternoon. Secretary of Xenological Affairs Min Wu was in his office reviewing trade agreements when his assistant rushed in with news of an urgent alien communication. "Sir, we have an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council," the assistant said, her face pale with worry. "They say it is about the ceremonial items from the trade summit." Min Wu straightened his tie and activated the holographic communication system. Within moments, his office filled with alien representatives, their forms flickering slightly due to the vast distances involved. "Greetings, Secretary Min Wu," Velthar began, her crystal voice ringing with barely controlled panic. "We must discuss the artifacts your species received during the recent diplomatic exchange." "Of course," Min Wu replied politely, pulling up files on his computer. Ambassador Jin Ho submitted all required documentation. "Is there some problem with customs regulations?" The aliens exchanged what might have been incredulous looks, though it was hard to tell with non-human faces. "Secretary," Kixtal clicked urgently, "your people possess the resonance core of infinite recursion. This device contains power that could reshape reality across multiple star systems. We need to know exactly how you are containing and controlling it." Minwu blinked, consulting his notes. The translators were working, but the concepts did not make much sense. "Are you referring to the ceremonial disk? According to my files, it is currently in Ambassador Jinho's personal custody." "Personal custody?" Velthar's form flared with alarm. "The core is in someone's home?" "Secretary, you must understand. This artifact requires specialized containment facilities and trained operators. One mistake could eliminate your entire solar system. I assure you, all diplomatic gifts are being treated with appropriate respect, Min-Woo said carefully. Ambassador Jin-Ho is an experienced professional. I can contact him if you need verification of the artifact's condition. Yes, several aliens said at once. Contact him immediately. We need to speak with whoever is operating the core. 20. Minutes later, Jin-Ho's phone rang while he was finishing up a meeting with the Trade Ministry. He recognized the emergency code and stepped out of the conference room to take the call. Jin-Ho, I need you to go home and check on the ceremonial disc from the Alien Summit, Min-Woo said without preamble. The aliens are very concerned about it, something about safety protocols. Is there a problem? Jin-Ho asked, already heading for the elevator. I can be home in 30 minutes. Just make sure it is secure and call me back. The aliens want to speak with you directly about it. Jin-Ho caught the next subway train home, wondering what could be so urgent about a decorative artifact. When he arrived at his apartment, Soo-bin was working at her computer while a half-empty coffee cup sat on their trusty coaster. Everything looks normal to me, he told Min-Woo when he called back. The disc is right where we left it, on the coffee table. Soo-bin has been using it as a coaster like we discussed. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Jin-Ho, Min-Woo said slowly. Did you just say your girlfriend is using an alien artifact as a coaster? Yes, why? It works perfectly for that. Soo-bin says it brings out the color in our furniture. Another pause. Longer this time. The aliens want to speak with you directly. Can you set up a video call from your apartment? Sure. No problem. An hour later, Jin-Ho sat on his couch with Soo-bin beside him, facing a wall-mounted screen filled with agitated alien faces. Behind them, clearly visible on the coffee table, the resonance core of infinite recursion supported Soo-bin's teacup exactly as it had for the past month. Humans, Velthar began, her voice tight with what sounded like barely controlled hysteria. We can see the core behind you. It appears to be supporting a beverage container. That is right, Soo-bin said cheerfully, waving at the camera. It makes a beautiful coaster. The patterns are so interesting. The silence that followed was so complete that Jin-Ho wondered if the transmission had failed. When the aliens finally spoke again, their voices were very, very quiet. You have been using the most powerful reality manipulation device in known existence, Kixtal said slowly, as a platform for hot drinks. Is that wrong? Jin-Ho asked, genuinely confused. You said it was a gift. We have been taking good care of it. The aliens stared at them through the screen for a long moment, processing the implications of what they were seeing. Finally, Elder Yixtal spoke. How long have you been doing this? About a month now, Soo-bin replied. Ever since Jin-Ho brought it home. We use it every morning for coffee and in the evenings for tea or wine. It is very convenient. Multiple times per day, Velthar whispered. Regular thermal applications, sustained gravitational pressure. And you have experienced no unusual effects? Jin-Ho and Soo-bin looked at each other and shrugged. Not really, Jin-Ho said. Although I have been sleeping better lately, and the neighborhood seems nicer somehow. The aliens disappeared from the screen for several minutes, presumably to have a private conference. When they returned, they looked like they had seen something that challenged everything they believed about the universe. 6 months had passed since the first emergency fleet arrived at the edge of human space. What had started as a crisis response had turned into the largest scientific observation project in galactic history. Ships from hundreds of worlds maintained their positions around the Sol system, their sensors recording every detail of what experts were calling the human phenomenon. Dr. Hae-jin had been promoted twice during those months, first to Director of Xenological Studies, then to Special Advisor for Interspecies Relations. Her comprehensive report on alien psychology had become required reading at diplomatic academies across human space. She was currently working on a follow-up study about long-term cultural exchange effects. On this particular morning, she sat in Jinho and Subin's living room just like she had dozens of times before, her laptop open and papers spread across the coffee table. Her cup of green tea sat exactly where it always did, on the beautiful disk that had become such a familiar part of their routine. "I still cannot believe how much attention this cultural exchange program has gotten," she said, typing notes while Jinho got ready for work. "The aliens send new research requests every week." "Fame is exhausting," Subin laughed, curled up on the couch with her morning coffee. "I had to make my social media accounts private because I was getting thousands of followers from alien species I have never heard of." Jinho straightened his tie in the hallway mirror. "At least the overtime pay is good. The diplomatic corps has tripled my salary just for being available for alien conferences." What none of them knew was that every major government and scientific institution in the galaxy was desperately trying to understand how humans had achieved perfect control over a resonance core. The energy readings were impossible to argue with. Earth was generating the most stable reality matrix anyone had ever recorded, and it was all centered on one small apartment in Seoul. High Curator Velthar had spent months developing theories about human consciousness and its relationship to cosmic forces. She published papers suggesting that humanity might be naturally evolved reality manipulators, a species born with intuitive understanding of dimensional physics. Swarm Speaker Kickstall took a different approach, proposing that humans had developed some kind of collective unconscious that could guide cosmic artifacts. His research teams studied human meditation practices, religious ceremonies, and cultural rituals, looking for clues about their mysterious abilities. War Prime Beksoon, meanwhile, had completely changed his opinion about human intelligence. His military reports now describe them as the most strategically brilliant species in the galaxy, capable of maintaining perfect operational security while deploying weapons of unprecedented power. The breakthrough came during what was supposed to be a routine check-in call. Hyojin had been asked to conduct another interview about human cultural practices for the Galactic Science Council. She set up her camera in the living room, with Jinho and Subin sitting nearby as they had during previous calls. It was meant to be a simple discussion about daily routines and social customs. "Dr. Hyojin," Velthar began as her hologram materialized. Above the coffee table, "We would like to understand more about human domestic practices. How do your people typically organize their living spaces?" "Well, it varies by individual preference," Hyejin replied, gesturing around the apartment. "But most people try to create spaces that are both functional and aesthetically pleasing. For example, Jinho and Subin have arranged their furniture to maximize both comfort and visual appeal." "I see. And the objects you use daily, do they have significance beyond their practical function?" "Often, yes. People like to surround themselves with things that have personal meaning or beauty. Take this coaster, for instance." Hyojin gestured to the disc beneath her teacup. "It is both functional and decorative." The camera automatically focused on the coffee table, providing a perfect close-up view of the resonance core of infinite recursion, supporting a ceramic cup of hot tea. For the aliens watching the transmission, time seemed to stop. They could see every detail of the artifact in perfect clarity, the intricate patterns that had taken their civilization's greatest artisans centuries to create, the geometric designs that contained the fundamental equations of reality itself, the precious materials that could only be forged in the hearts of dying stars. And there it was, casually supporting a cup of tea like any ordinary household item. "Doctor," Velthar said very quietly, "could you ask your friends to explain how they choose to use that particular object?" Hyojin looked over at Jinho and Subin, who were sharing a bowl of fruit while watching the conversation with mild interest. "She wants to know why you decided to use the disc as a coaster," Hyojin translated. Subin smiled brightly at the camera. "Oh, that was easy. It is exactly the right size and weight for a coaster, and the patterns are so beautiful. Why would you not use something so perfect for its obvious purpose? Obvious purpose, several aliens said simultaneously. Jinho nodded, swallowing a bite of apple. When I first saw it, I thought it might be decorative, but Subin immediately realized it was meant to be functional. Good design always serves a purpose. But did you not consider that it might have other capabilities? Kixtal asked carefully. Like, what? Subin asked, genuinely curious. It is clearly designed as a beverage support platform. Look at the size, the weight distribution, the heat-resistant surface. What else would you do with it? The alien representatives exchanged looks of dawning comprehension that was equal parts amazement and horror. You mean, Elder Yixtal said, slowly, you have been using the core as a coaster because you believe that is what it was designed for. Of course, Jinho replied, looking puzzled. Why would you design something that looks like a perfect coaster if you wanted people to use it for something else? That would be terrible design. High Curator Velthar felt something that her species had no word for, but that humans would recognize as the sensation of having one's entire worldview turned upside down. Humans, she said carefully. The artifact you are using is one of the most powerful devices ever created. It can reshape reality, manipulate space and time, bridge dimensions that were never meant to touch. That sounds very impressive, Subin said politely. But it also makes an excellent coaster. You are not afraid of its power? Jinho shrugged. Why would we be afraid of a coaster? We use it every day. It works perfectly. But the power? What power? Heejin asked, joining the conversation. You keep talking about cosmic forces and reality manipulation, but these are clearly ceremonial objects with symbolic meaning. They are beautiful and well-made, but they are still just household items. The silence that followed lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, Swarm Speaker Kixtal spoke. Humans, what you call a coaster, we call the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. Wars have been fought over artifacts like this. Entire civilizations have been destroyed by their misuse. That seems like a waste, Subin observed. Why fight wars over kitchenware? It is not kitchenware, Velthar insisted. It is a reality manipulation device of unimaginable power. But we use it for drinks, Jinho pointed out reasonably. And it works great for that. If it can do all these other things you mentioned, why does it work so well as a coaster? The question hung in the air while the greatest minds in the galaxy suddenly realized they had been asking the wrong questions. For millions of years. Perhaps, Elder Yixtal said slowly, the question is not why you use it as a coaster, but why we never thought to try. Over the next several hours, as the implications sank in, the entire galactic understanding of resonance cores shifted. The devices were not weapons or tools of cosmic manipulation. They were stabilizing artifacts, designed to create perfect harmony between matter and energy, space and time, reality and possibility, and the most stable, harmonious use anyone had ever found for them was supporting hot beverages in the homes of beings who simply wanted to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee. Within weeks, the Galactic Council passed the Soul Accords, officially recognizing humanity as keepers of cosmic balance. Earth was designated as a training center where other species could learn the way of casual wisdom. And Jinho and Subin found themselves inadvertently famous across hundreds of worlds. But the most important change was simpler than that. Across the galaxy, on worlds where ancient resonance cores had been locked away in temples and vaults for millennia, beings began to ask a different question. What if we just tried using them normally, and slowly, carefully, with cups of tea and bowls of soup and glasses of wine, the galaxy began to discover that sometimes the most profound wisdom was also the most obvious. The universe worked better when you did not overthink it. Jinho never did understand what all the fuss was about. But every morning, As he placed his coffee cup on their beautiful coaster and watched the patterns shimmer in the light, he felt grateful for a galaxy where beings could find beauty and purpose in the simplest things, even if those simple things happened to be the most powerful artifacts in existence.